Started. All right. Fantastic. Let's do it. Okay, I'm so excited about this. This is the first time I've tried it out as a solo. So, for those of you who are on the live stream, can I just ask you just a bit of a favor who are joining us live, if you can kind of help everyone out with the questions. So, you know the answers to the questions. Yeah. The number one question we're going to get is this being recorded? And yes, it absolutely is being recorded. We are live streaming on YouTube right now, and that is going to be the recording. I've also popped a link to the files which are in the chat. They are only for those who've joined us live, and I will send them out also with the recording, but they will not be available publicly on YouTube. So for anyone who joins us afterwards, I'm not going to be able to access that. So for people who are joining us later on, if people are having trouble with the link, if you wouldn't mind just sharing it for everybody else, because I'm doing this solo and I don't have anyone else to help me. So if you wouldn't mind just helping me out with answering questions and things like that, I think most of you know how this all works. So let's get started. I'm so excited. This is going to be really, really different. So let me just, I've just popped the link to all of the files that I'm going to use today. So let's get started. My name is Danielle Stein Fairhurst, and we're going to talk about a topic today, which I'm not going to say it's one of my favorite topics because nobody likes talking about errors, but it is an important issue in financial modeling, and that's why I want to talk about it today. Carolina has just joined us from Switzerland. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got so many fantastic people here today. So this is kind of the rough plan of what I'm planning to talk about today. I have no idea how we're going to go for time. I am going to leave this to an hour, so we will cut this off at an hour. I'm hoping that we'll get a little bit of a discussion going. So these are kind of the topics that I'd like to go through. The second two topics are we may not get time to go into them in detail, and if that's the case, I have got a few videos which I will share with everyone afterwards. But the first two ones I think are going to be some quite interesting topics that I think everybody is going to hopefully have a little bit of a discussion about. So first of all, this is when you click on the link to the files, which I'm just sharing again. These are all of the files that I've made available to you. So just a couple of links of different things that I think you might be interested in today, and most importantly, the files that we'll be going through. For those who haven't met me before, I am Danielle Stein Fairhurst, and my favorite thing in the world is to run virtual meetups, usually with someone much, much smarter than me and who knows a lot more about a particular technical subject. But today I'm running this one solo. So it's a little bit of a different format. I am a master financial modeler, which is a level 3 of the Financial Modeling Institute, one of only 8 people in the world with that qualification, and the only woman. I've written a couple of books on financial modeling, and of course I run modelers meetups, which are mostly online nowadays. So just a little bit about financial modeling. So the definition of financial modeling, as I like to call it, is that it is a little more than just a complex spreadsheet. So we know that most of the time financial models are built in Excel. We know that Excel is wonderful. It's absolutely fantastic. We are here because we all love Excel, but they can be quite prone to error. And I'm going to quote a little bit from one of my books, which is Financial Modeling in Excel for Dummies. And my definition of a financial model is that it's a tool that, usually in Excel, that displays possible solutions to real world financial problems. So you've got a problem and you want to create a solution for that, and we're doing that in Excel. Most of the time, it will contain a P&L, a cash flow, and a balance sheet. It doesn't always, though. And one of the key definitions of a financial model is that it has these intricacies, it has these links within itself. So linking from one cell to another, that is by definition what a financial model is. If it's just a dump of information, that's not a model. If it doesn't contain formulas, if it doesn't contain some kind of dynamic and ideally some hypothetical scenarios as well. That's really the purpose of a financial model. The problem with that is that there's a heck of a lot that can go wrong with a model, and that is what we're going to talk about today. The horror stories, you know, those kind of terrible things that can go wrong if you are not absolutely terrified of having an error in your model. You should be, because it's the number one thing I think that keeps a lot of modelers up at night is the possibility that something could go wrong in your model. And we always say the only thing worse than finding an error in your model is not finding an error in your model and your model being completely wrong. So that is something that we want to make sure that that doesn't happen to you. And also the only thing worse than that is your boss finding the error in your model or someone else finding it. And so we're going to go through some of the best sort of strategies for reducing those kinds of errors today. And you might be familiar with the Dirty Dozen from Usbrig. 12 modeling horror stories. They often keep up with all of the, you know, terrible things that can happen. Thanks, guys. I can see there's a lot of stuff going on in the chat. So thank you for all of that. Fantastic. So just to sort of intro the kind of models error. Typically, these are the types of model errors that we often see. Firstly, formula errors. That's probably the most embarrassing. You know, we make mistakes all the time. You know, as you're modeling, it's really, really easy to make mistakes, but they're also the easiest to fix. So we want to sort of, as you going through your model, to try to sort of pick up any errors that happen with the formulas. And they're also the most embarrassing if they sneak through into the model. So Rita, no, you are not going to be on mute. I'm just going to go through a couple of intro things and then I'm going to pass it over to you very soon. So this is going to be a little bit different where I'm going to get you guys to let me know what you think about all of this. I have no idea how all of this is going to work. We've got 78 people on the line right now, so I can't let all of you onto the stage, so we're going to pick a couple of people. So if you've got something you'd like to talk about, please test, make sure you've got your camera and your microphone working and make sure you've got something nice and succinct to say about the topic because yeah, so first of all, yeah, so formula errors, we've got incorrect assumptions and logic errors, which are the other type of errors, or, you know, flawed calculation, you know, something flawed in the way that you're putting the model together, that sort of thing. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm sure you knew I was going to say this, was using dynamic arrays and how important that is. Or how I think that's one of the number one things you can do to reduce errors is to use dynamic arrays. And I just want to demo very quickly what a dynamic array looks like. If you haven't seen one before, if you've followed me on LinkedIn, you'll know that I do talk about that quite a lot. We are not going to look at that. I'm going to stop sharing for a sec and just find my file. Okay, let me just find what I've done with it. Okay, I'm just going to share. Here we go. All right, there it is. Yes, I talk about dynamic arrays an awful lot on LinkedIn. I absolutely love dynamic arrays, and I'll show you why. So this is the file that I have made available for everyone. And just to give you a bit of just as a bit of an intro, you know, the difference between using ordinary cell references and dynamic arrays. So ordinarily you'd go like this equals left arrow, and then you'd need to use your F4 shortcut because of course you want to have a single calculation block all the way across multiplied by up arrow. And of course you use your shortcuts like that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it like that. That is kind of your typical sort of copy across, copy down. How do you guys copy across and copy down? Anyone got some little shortcuts for me? Yes, Peter says dynamic arrays change everything. Will they be adopted though? Alt ESF, Syed says. Interesting. I don't know that one. Alt ESF. Oh, maybe not. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna try that one. No, that didn't work for me. I'm gonna try sharing again. Okay. Any other shortcuts for me? Copying across. You can see my Excel, right? So you should be able to see my Excel. Control D, yes. F2 and then Control Enter. That's a nice one. Yeah, Control R. Lots of people are saying Control R and Control D. So Control R and Control D, I think are some of my favorites. And you can see that my error check has righted itself. That's a pretty complicated error check. I don't think it necessarily needs to be quite that long, but it's just using some conditional formatting and using my Windows full stop to come up with the emojis. I quite like using that, and then just doing some simple conditional formatting over the top. So that's using ordinary cell referencing. Using dynamic arrays will just be like this: equals left arrow, down, multiplied by, and across, enter, like that. So that is a heck of a lot simpler and easier, I think. And in terms of errors, just basically less that can go wrong, because a lot of the errors that happen in a model happen when you copy rather than when you create the formula. And when you're using dynamic arrays, you've just got one single cell in the corner and it automatically spills across. So basically there's a lot less that can go wrong. Peter Bartholomew says he hasn't used non-dynamic arrays for 10 years. I know Peter's been using array formulas for a really long time. CSE, the old Control Shift Enter. Jared's just shared a great LinkedIn post. Fantastic. Oh, that's my LinkedIn post. Thank you, Jared. Okay. So just to give you an idea of what dynamic arrays can do for you, this is using, just that traditional sort of split between interest and principal payments. So you're using the IPMT and the PPMT. So looking at the interest component and the principal component. And that's, just using, and I've given you this file if you want to play around with it, just a nice little chart. It's kind of nice to do that. If you're using non-dynamic arrays, it would look like this. Change it to 5 and it will go down to 5, and that's fine. The calculations are correct. It's not very flexible in terms of a timeline. Yes, that's right. This comes from one of my LinkedIn courses, Syed. That's right. So in the financial functions for Excel course, and also, I think it's in that one, and also financial modeling for dynamic arrays in my LinkedIn course. So I just wanted to show you what this would look like for using a dynamic array. So you can see here, there's only one change with the second one, is that I've actually used a sequence so that I can split this. The PMT function does not need to be dynamic. So I've used a little helper row to force it to spill dynamically across. And so I'm using an IPMT again and a PPMT. But the beauty of doing it like this is that by using a sequence, that is going to be fully dynamic, so that if I change that to a 5, you can see that it just automatically copies across. And if I had used conditional formatting correctly, that bar would also not be there as well. So that's really the beauty of using dynamic arrays. So, and that's why I think they're fantastic for modeling. And I think that they do help to reduce errors. There's just one last thing I wanted to show you before I'm going to hand over to you and see if you have any comments about using dynamic arrays to reduce errors. And I just wanted to show you an error check. So you can see I use error checks a lot. This was an example of an error check. But here's an error check that I did on a dynamic array. And this one does come from the Financial Modeling for Dynamic Arrays course. So for those of you who've got the files, maybe you can have a look and tell me if you can find the error in my error check. So you can see here I've got 40% large, 60% small. So we're splitting out our units of sales into two different components, large and small, and we want to make sure that it adds up to 100%. So I'm using an error check here, and the problem is if I do this with an ordinary error check and copy it across without using dynamic arrays, you can see there's actually an error in my error check. Anyone tell me what's wrong? What have I done wrong? So you can see that I've used dynamic arrays. I've used dynamic arrays. So it's an example of how dynamic arrays can actually cause errors if you're not careful. So rounding, yeah, sometimes it is rounding, Saeed. Yeah, not in this case. Can you see what I've done wrong? So that is using the hash means that it refers to a dynamic array. Yes, that's right. Kate says C8 is not dynamic. So I have done something very foolish here in that I have mixed dynamic and non-dynamic arrays. So that's something to be careful of. And I'm building an error check, but I've ended up with an error in my error check, which kind of tells me that there's something funny going on. And this new Copilot thing is driving me crazy. Hide until I reopen this document. There we go. That's better. So what I need to do is to just correct it by going and making this, if I use a hash. So try it out here. So go there. And of course, it's because I've got formulas in the way, I've ended up with a spill error. So Control Shift right arrow and just remove it like that. And that will remove the the error that's coming up. So if you've got a copy of this file, you can follow along and try that. So all I did was to just correct the error like that and then get rid of the formula cells that were in the way. Okay, so what we have talked about so far is basically about using dynamic arrays to reduce errors or the potential for errors in a model. So I'm interested to see if anyone has any comments on that, anything you would like to add to the discussion. If you raise your hand and would like to come onto the stage and let me know what you thought about that. Anybody? I can't see anybody's hand up just yet. Everybody's suddenly gone shy. Oh, Peter, fantastic. Thank you, Peter. I am going to get you onto the stage. If I can find you. Anybody else? Just trying to get Peter onto the stage. There we go, Peter. So you are now a panelist, Peter. So if you would like to share your camera and unmute your microphone and tell us what you think. We are going to hear from you as well, Peter, very soon. Peter's going to be our next speaker for a virtual meetup coming up in a couple of weeks. I'll tell you all about it. So anybody else? Peter, I can't think you're muted. And we've got Syed.
Unmute.
Hi.
I'm now here.
Yes, there you are.
Yes. It's a very complicated system of keeping track of things and where the mute buttons are moving to.
Yes. This is good practice for next time.
Yeah, I think a dummy run. That I think that this is the start of the change that dynamic arrays could make. That's the other. If you take a spreadsheet as a story written in numbers, with dynamic arrays, it's a story written in words, and the words are to be found in the advanced formula editor. And it's a very different mindset. And it's not whether the errors read across, they're just completely different sort of start my video, it says. That it's just completely different setup. The challenge with the new I can say it's far less prone to error, but I
Mm,
shouldn't be comparing new with old. I should be comparing new with 40 years of experience. That's a whole lot of infrastructure of other code that is used to support the traditional spreadsheets, to run the checks, and
mm,
and that's a higher bar to try and beat.
mm,
Um, that's I've been working with Carolina and have just sort of produced a revolver formula.
mm.
The formula is 4 lines of code, and it
Wow.
replaces several sheets of numbers. Uh,
Okay.
that it's difficult to draw the comparison.
Yes.
So no, I
Yeah.
think that it's going to be very interesting to see whether the seismic change that is possible actually occurs.
And and then if it is possible, well, it is possible and it gets rolled out, is it actually going to be used by modelers? That's
Yeah,
the question, I think.
exactly. Yeah.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay, that's my
Syed.
bit.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Yeah.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Syed.
So my question is like, for example, if we are using dynamic arrays, can we use it in complex financial modeling scenarios like M&A modeling and leverage buyout analysis? That's my question.
Mm. I think so. I think it's definitely possible. I think the real challenge is, like I just demonstrated, is that there is a bit of a limitation with some of the things that you can do with dynamic arrays at the moment. We find that there is some certain things that we kind of can't always do, or they become a lot more complex if we want to make them dynamic. And so we are tempted to then go back to mixing them. So using traditional formulas and array formulas, and we end up mixing them. And then that can also cause problems like I just demonstrated, but it's certainly possible. And I must admit, I do tend to mix them sometimes, but I'm very, very careful when I do so for that reason. That can cause problems. Hmm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sayed.
Thank you very much.
Good, good. All right, so I might just pop both of you into back as attendees, and then we'll move on to the next section. So thanks, guys. All right, so let's continue now. Okay, so as we talked about, so the reason I like the dynamic arrays is that you don't have to copy and paste. They lead to, so the main one in terms of errors is that they lead to fewer errors, and that causes less error. So we've heard a little bit from you. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the use of AI, which could potentially reduce errors in financial models. And I don't really know the answer to this. My opinion on this, and if you'd like to contribute, please raise your hand and let me know what you think about it. I have not really found yet the use of AI. The two that I've really played with are Copilot and ChatGPT yet to be that useful in terms of reducing errors. I did a little test last week where I gave it a formula that I knew. Actually, I'll show you the one I did. I've got it right here. I gave it this formula, this one here. So I used really simple calculation here. So it's just using ordinary formulas, and you can see there's a really simple error. And I asked Copilot to check this sheet for me and tell me if there were any errors. And Copilot said very confidently, no, there are no errors. And to me, it would take like 5 seconds to realize, if you just did an error check, to see that that error check is not a very good one, to see that there's a very simple error. So I said, please, could you try again? Is there anything with the formulas that perhaps could you look at the formulas and tell me if they're okay? And it said, no, no, yes, yes, your formulas look great, everything looks fine. And so then I asked it to add up and to say, are the formulas including all the data? And it said, oh, yes, actually, the formulas are not including the data. So it was not particularly a successful trial for me. I've also, trialed building a model, but not in Excel. Like I think Copilot can help you with formulas. It can help you find ways of doing things. I don't know yet that it can actually build a model for you or reduce the error or build error checks for you. I know that it's certainly possible. I'm just not sure. I think it's usually a bit of a black box. So Mohammed says, quick question, financial modeling and analysis, which is more efficient, Power Query or dynamic arrays? They're both very useful. Good question, Mohammed. Power Query and dynamic arrays are two very, very different tools. They're both equally fantastic. In terms of efficiency, probably Power Query will be able to handle larger quantities of data, I think. Let me know anyone who thinks differently. Jared says, I find that Copilot works well to help build the formulas, but then when you use it outside of Excel and copy it into Excel, but not necessarily in Excel itself. Yes, it is totally possible inside Excel. Yeah, it's got the sort of issues. Yeah, thanks, Jared. If anyone wants to come on stage, just raise your hand right now. Yeah, so Joseph says, I agree with the problem that AI struggles with error checking because the underlying models are stochastic. Yeah, I think AI still requires human in the loop, unfortunately, yes, that is true. And if we could learn as humans how to use AI, I think that is definitely what we need to do. Fantastic. Cole is going to come onto stage. I'm going to stop sharing. Hi, Cole. Have you got a camera? So hopefully it's going to let you on stage and show your camera. How are you, Cole? Nice to see you. Let us know what your opinion is on this. Devakala says, would you think AI will replace financial modelers? In that case, what respect to data security? I think it absolutely could replace financial modelers, not yet. Hi, Cole. How are you doing? Oh, we can't hear you. Your microphone's not quite set up. Yes, the recording will be available. Kalpesh has given us a link to a startup to develop an AI tool that creates financial models from scratch. Yes, I wish I had $1 for every single person that sent me a startup that's going to create new financial models outside Excel.
How about that,
Nicole, there
Danielle?
you are.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I've experimented a little bit with AI and exactly what you've done, thrown a dummy model into AI. Obviously, there's privacy concerns when you're playing with something like that, but I still use software for that because it's offline and it keeps if you using confidential data, that's obviously a sort of a key concern. But I can see that we're probably another year or two away from AI really achieving something in this area that you're talking about. I think it's just a matter of when. But yeah, important to be thinking about privacy concerns at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, Cole. We have got Joseph there. So Joseph, let us know what you think. If you've got a camera and microphone there, Joseph.
Hi, can you see me?
Hello. Hi.
Yes, like I made the comments before that like one of the problems with AI trying to read spreadsheet models is that the underlying like large language model, two different types of models are stochastic, and models are like engines, so they need to be like absolutely precise, otherwise they'll have errors. So it's just like different fundamentals of how they work.
Yeah, there was we ran an interesting session with Jeff Robson a couple of months ago, and he showed us one in just using ChatGPT, where he like basically spoke to it and asked it to build and gave it the numbers, and it built a model, which was very impressive in Excel. But it was, when you tested it in Excel, it was a bit out, which was quite concerning. So yes, that's a really good point. Yeah. Thanks, Joseph. Anything to add to that, Cole? Or anybody else like to add? So we'll just give it a minute, see if anyone else has got anything to say about that. And then we'll move on to the next section. So yeah, I don't think, I think what's really important is that we stay up to date as modelers. I think things are changing a lot. And it's really easy to get overwhelmed and left behind. I know I certainly, just try and sort of keep up with what's going on, and to make sure that we remain relevant, so that when it comes to a point where AI will be able to build a model, that we're able to then harness it correctly, and make sure that we're able to use it. Yeah, good. All right. So if there's nothing else to add, I will get you guys back into the audience, and we'll continue. All right. Nice to see you all. Okay.
You too.
Good. Thanks, Joseph. Okay. Cool. All right. So let's continue, unless there's anything else to add. Okay. So, yeah, and similarly, if there's anything else to add. Oh, yes, we've got a comment from Jenny. She says, Copilot has been a great help improving my use of Power Query, from just using the user interface to actually writing the M code, asking it for the syntax to do a particular action, and then tweaking it. Yes, that's a really good point, Jenny. Because, in the old days, we would learn from blogs, and the problem with using a blog or a book or something is that it's using a particular example. But what AI can do to help you learn is it can actually do it in context of your own problem. And I think that's does make the learning process a lot easier. So I thought I'd just now go through a couple of technical strategies that just come from this book. And I've actually given you an extract from the book. Chapter 13 is all about strategies to reduce error. So here are the 10 strategies that you might find interesting. So, and I'll go through each of those and demonstrate what I mean by each of those. Firstly, using the enter key. And I mean, these do not assume that you're using dynamic arrays. They're for either using dynamic arrays or none. First of all is using the enter key, which I think is something that a lot of people don't always do. And what I mean by that, if I go back to here, like here's an example of using the offset function, and the offset, this one doesn't work very well with dynamic arrays, or I'm sure it's possible, but I've done it using ordinary formulas, and it's quite hard to do an error check here, because this error check is just making sure that this is all adding up to 100%. So it's basically looking at the difference between sales and cash flow, and it's quite hard to test it. So the best thing to do is to say, well, if we have sales of 437 and we expect 10% of those payments to be made immediately, we would expect that number to be 44, and to use the enter key and to check it and test it as you go, rather than what I see a lot of people do is that they just click somewhere else and they don't look back at what the number is, like look at actually the number that goes in, you know, to make sure that you're not sort of, you know, just clicking somewhere else and then, you know, finding that, you know, we often find that that then causes an error. Most of the time you'll get away with it, but sometimes if I do something like that, you know, it can cause an error if you're just kind of randomly clicking different places. So that's one thing is, you know, just making sure that you use the enter key. And once you've hit the enter key, look at the formula. Does it look right? Does it look sensible? You know, actually work it out in your head, test it before you copy it or before, you know, it's spilling across. So, you know, check it as you go. And I think that's probably your number one line of defense against reducing errors, is to be constantly checking your work. And after you've checked it, check it again, using the F2 key if you are using non-dynamic arrays. So F2, I think, is a great way of checking your formulas. That was probably one of the things that I found the most difficult to get used to with using dynamic arrays, going back to the first one, is not being able to use the F2 key. So being able to go in and F2 to check it and not being able to do that here. F9, oh, Syed said using F9. What do you mean F9? F9 is calculate usually, and yes, that would work with dynamic arrays. Oh, I thought you were about to give me a tip I hadn't heard of. Okay. If anyone knows how to, I think they're looking at changing potentially. They are still changing the functionality of dynamic array. So we do still see some changes from time to time. But at this stage, the F2 doesn't work. But if you're not using dynamic arrays, using the F2 key is a good thing to do. Joseph said one thing to add on errors is we've been working on the structural mismatch between spreadsheets, and yeah, interesting. Okay, yeah, that sounds great, Joseph. Yeah, it sounds like we maybe need to have a session from you if there's something in particular. Yeah, we can get into that into a little bit more detail. Sounds good. So number 4, once you've checked your model 3 times, have somebody else check it, you know, have a colleague check it before it gets published, you know, document and validate the assumptions. So, you know, models are garbage in, garbage out, make sure that the assumptions are really clear, laid out. So the assumptions are a really important part of the model, and documentation is an important thing to do. Documenting your methodology, you know, maybe putting in a flow chart, that kind of thing. That can really help to identify logic errors sometimes. I am only using ordinary Excel here, so the tips that I give are just about using standard Excel, because I'm a trainer, so I teach people how to use financial models, and I generally don't advocate add-ins that aren't sort of freely available. But if anyone's got any auditing add-ins or flowchart add-ins, feel free to drop them in the chat as well, because I know some people like to use them. Personally, I don't, but that can be useful. Stress testing, you know, making sure, by stress testing, it's quite different to scenarios or sensitivity testing, is where you put in some kind of you know, price set to 0, revenue should be 0. I mean, obviously you're never going to do that, but just to kind of test that your model is actually working properly. Kavita says Arixel. Yes, I have. Yeah, that is a good add-in. Thanks for that. So stress testing, you know, if you were to double the head count, change the growth rate to 0, of course, you know, charting, that kind of thing. Scenarios can really flush out errors. So what I mean by scenarios is, you know, just a really simple method of scenarios is just doing a drop down. So, you know, best case, base case, worst case is probably the most simple way of building a scenario analysis. You know, just see how things change. You would, you know, make sure that they are moving in the right direction. So if your costs were to go up, of course, your profitability would go down, that kind of thing. So always kind of sense checking, you know, take note of your Excel errors. So there's a number of different errors, and they've added quite a few new types of errors. So things like the spill error, the busy, these kind of other error checks, which are great. Errors in Excel. So take note of them. I don't mind seeing an error. Do not suppress the error unless you're really aware of what it does. Sometimes Excel errors are good. I would much rather see an Excel error than a number that looks like it's right when in fact it's completely wrong. So be careful of that. Being careful of circular references. So, making a formula link to itself. Circular references are generally a bad idea in a model, and taking note of those. If you deliberately have a circular reference in a model, be sure of that you really want it. Probably the most common type of circular reference is in interest calculations, where you have your interest amount drives your profit, which drives your funding, which drives your interest, which drives your cash flow, which drives your fund. You end up with this kind of circular reference in a model. We'll talk about, if I've got time, I will show you one of the lambda functions that can get around that with dynamic arrays, which I'm hoping to get some time to show you. And lastly, error checks, of course, are a great way to reduce errors. So, any comments on that? Do you like the orange analogy, Moses? Any comments on that? Anybody like to come on stage, talk about any of that stuff? Cole has got something to say. Fantastic. What do you think, Cole, about that? Hopefully we'll get you on stage a bit quicker. We're getting used to this. A little bit different.
It actually takes a second to click through at this end. Am I on now?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So Danielle, when I read that, I think that they all make a lot of sense to me. But particularly if you're building a complex model, one of the things that I didn't see on that list, which I would typically like to see, is just the structuring part of the model itself. Because if a model's well structured, errors tend to jump out at you a lot more readily. But also, I suspect when you put that list together, or where you got it from, you probably assumed that was the case anyway, because that's the way you like to do things. But I picked up many models where that hasn't been the case, and it creates a lot of noise, and that noise can really distract you from honing in on where the errors actually lie. So I think for me, a starting point is laying out something really well and neatly, and then the errors jump out at you more readily then.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, that's probably more in, I talk more about that in terms of best practice, really.
Yeah.
Yes, good point. Thank you for that.
Yeah, okay. Got it.
Okay.
So you're coming at it from a technical perspective, right?
Yeah, so as you're building the model, I
Gotcha.
suppose. But no, you're right. Structure is an important part of that as well, for sure.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, so anybody else? I think we're good. We've got lots of great comments in there, which is great. I just thought I might, for the last little bit of time that we've got left, is just talk to you about the method of just getting into this corkscrew and circular references in using dynamic arrays. I think they're one way around some of the problems that you get. Let me just explain what I mean. So we talked about circular references a moment ago, and the other issue, of course, which doesn't work very well with dynamic formulas, is the corkscrew, where you kind of have this opening, closing, which is a really common technique in a lot of models. So I thought I might just jump to the tab this one here called corkscrew, and using ordinary formulas, this is typically how you would build it. And this can be quite error prone because you've got your kind of opening links down to the closing. Make this a little bit bigger, make sure you can all see it properly. So, you've got your opening PP&E here, and then you add your CapEx, take out your depreciation, and that gives you your closing amount. And then, so you have inconsistent formulas. And of course, we know that inconsistent formulas are a bad idea in terms of financial modeling. You can do it dynamically, but there's a few ways of doing it, but we end up so rather than just linking to the previous one, we end up with this sort of sum ifs thing, and it kind of gets a bit, and we've had to use a scan, and I've used an old-fashioned lambda there, but if you're using the newer version, you don't need the lambda. But I just wanted to show you, Craig Hatmaker, I know, is not here because it's like 3 o'clock in the morning or something for him. But I just wanted to show you these new types of formulas, which I have given you inside this model. We actually ran a session with him about a month ago. So I'll give you a link to that as well. So that's, yes, using a scan is a good technique. Or you can do it like this, like that. So that just kind of gives you the solution in one single formula. And if you don't know what that's doing, you can just type corkscrew, open bracket, close bracket. That kind of gives you all of the details there. Now that won't work in your ordinary version of Excel. That is actually in the name manager in this file that I've given you. Oh, I've got a couple of different versions of it there, but that can kind of show you there. I've also given you a link that Craig has made available for us, and a coupon code. So you can download a starter pack. There's a whole lot of formulas like this that work really well with dynamic arrays, and can get around a lot of these problems that we've talked about. So I'll just show you one more of those. And that's the circular reference problem. So, you've got your opening, and this is not a great solution here. We've got our opening cash, and that's linking to there. And of course, our interest should be the average between the opening and the closing balance. But we can't do that because we end up with a circular reference. And so what a lot of people do is they go into your options, options and enable iterative calculations, which I don't think is great. Yeah, Peter says the catch with that is that you have to program a step of your entire model as a single formula. Yeah, that's true. I do not agree with using iterative calculations when it comes to circular references. So I'd prefer not to do that. There's a few ways around it. You can use a macro. You can use you will have to get around this problem. If you're sitting to the Financial Modelling Institute to become a certified financial modeler, you need to build a full set of financial statements. And one of the things they actually allow is to do it like this, where you link it to the opening balance. Or you can use a macro, or you can use iterative calculations. There's a few different ways around it. If you use dynamic arrays, it's even worse. So, having to, we're basically excluding the interest entirely in this example. So I wouldn't recommend the second one. It's not a great solution. This one is, I've used that corkscrew thing again. And this is another one called interest on average cash. And that is a more accurate way of dealing with it. So, but you wouldn't be able to do this one in the exam because you'd need to copy the formula over. So that's been already created for you. So the best way of getting those would be to either copy them out of this workbook, which I've given you, or use going back to the starter pack. You can download it there. So yes, so Carolina says that's what Peter and Craig, so Peter Bartholomew and Craig Hatmaker are trying to solve for financial models. Absolutely. So I won't try to sort of tackle anything further. If anyone has anything to sort of comment on or add to feel free to raise your hand, and we've still got a few minutes to get you onto the stage. I think that financial modeling is an absolutely wonderful career. It's pretty much all I've ever done is work with Excel and financial models. I think it's such a great skill to have, no matter where you are in the world. Having really good financial modeling and Excel skills are going to stand you in good stead right throughout your career. I think it's an absolutely great thing to have on your resume, and being able to build error-free models is a really important part of the skill of being a good financial modeler. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it with you today. So, making sure that you keep up with things that are happening. The Financial Modeling World Cup happens, I think it's about 8 times a year. It's really, really hard. I just did it actually this afternoon. And it was really hard. And it's a great way of keeping up and practicing your financial modeling skills. That's a great thing to do. I went to Las Vegas for the finals at the end of last year, so that's a really good thing to do. This photo was actually taken at the Global Excel Summit in London at the beginning of this year. There are, as I said, there's 8 of us in the world who are master financial modelers, and there was 4 of us that were there that day. So we managed to get a photo together with Ian Schnorr, who is the director of Financial Modeling Institute. So think about becoming a certified financial modeler. I think it's a great thing to do. Irene's asking about the financial modeling competition. Yes, it's fmworldcup.com, I think is the website. I will put some of these links in the email that I'll send out to you. Yes, so some people are saying this is a great, these webinars are fantastic. Yes, I run them quite frequently, probably every couple of weeks. I try and do it. Sometimes we go like a month or so, depending on my travel or what I'm doing. Generally I have a guest, somebody who talks about a particular topic. So if you have an idea for a topic or something like that, let me know and we'll get it on the schedule. Our next one, we've got Women in Financial Modeling, which is just for women or those who identify as female. We've got one coming up soon. I think it's later on, in a couple of days, on the 18th. So you can join that. The link is there, so you can see all of the things that we've got scheduled. It's there. We're going to hear from Rishi Sapra next, and then after that, we've got Peter Bartholomew, who we heard from just earlier today. So we've got a question about the MFM, CFM prep. So there's 3 levels. There's the AFM, the CFM, and the MFM. CFM is a lot harder than the AFM. There's 12 topics that you need to study. It's a lot harder to prepare because there are not as much materials available. So FMI has got quite a lot of information on the website though about it. So check it out. It's probably the only sort of dedicated financial modeling, practical exam that you can do. It's gained quite a lot of traction there. So anyone else, any final comments from anyone, any questions or anything, just pop it in the chat. Otherwise, we will finish up for today. Let me know. Can you share the 5G Lambda? Yes, I'll pop everything in the email, which I'll send out to you tomorrow. Yeah, okay, I'll just pop it up there. Where did I put that? It was, that one there. Okay, I'll pop it in the email. Thank you, Jared, for, yes, I have actually got a masterclass coming up tomorrow, and there is 1 spot left, they tell me. Oh, yes, Thomas says Giles will set up a training course prep for CFM. Yes, follow Giles. He is always involved with the Financial Modeling World Cup and the Excel esports. He's one of the commentators, as am I from time to time. That's him there, and the second one from the left. He runs a lot of fantastic things, and yes, apparently he's setting up a training course for the CFM, which is great. Yes, would I advise taking the FMWC cases to prep for the CFM? Yes, I would. I would do the CFM cases that you get from FMI first. And when you run out of those, yes, there are some good ones from the FMWC as well. Yes. Fantastic. Okay. All right. Thanks, Jared, for sharing all of that. Thank you, everybody, for your participation today. That was fun. Thanks for that. So let me know, there should be, when we finish off, there should be a survey that pops up. So let me know what you thought about it. If you like this style of meetup, or whether you'd rather we just go back to the one where everybody just stays quiet and we just hear from somebody who knows what they're talking about. We have got more of those coming up. I just wanted to try this as something a bit different. I kind of feel like I wanted to give you guys a bit more of a voice. So let me know if you like it. Yeah, and if you have any other topics that you'd like to learn about. Oh, Ian Bennett, he is also an MFM. Great to, fantastic. I didn't realize you were there, Ian. All right, thanks everybody, and I'll see you